So my name is Florence Swamy. I'm originally from Suva, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Pacific Center for Peacebuilding. In terms of my background, for a large part of my working career, I've worked in government and largely in government statutory organizations. So my background is really in marketing, as well as in media and communications as well, and in development work. And so that was the perfect segue for me when this opportunity came at the Pacific Center for Peacebuilding to work at community level, particularly in implementing programs for communities in the area of development. So the Pacific Center for Peacebuilding is an NGO. It was established in 2007, and we're registered under the Charitable Trusts Act. Our work is in conflict resolution, conflict management, and conflict transformation. And the work we do in this area is rolled out through three main program areas. First is community peace building, and so we work with communities largely in the rural areas, but very shortly we're going to start work in communities which are closer to urban centers as well. So the work in that space is about largely service delivery, about development issues, about violence, about gender-based violence, and largely about the issues that concern people as a result of development that goes on around them. So issues that the young people are facing, issues that women are facing, but also capturing generational conversations and the conflicts which may arise out of that in that space. So when we work in community levels, we try to be inclusive. We try to see what the issues are that are concerning a wide range of people. And so our work really is also bringing together ethnicities to find what common issues are and what the common grounds for conversations may be. So that's one program. Secondly, we have a women's peacebuilding leadership program. That program for us is what takes us into the Pacific region. And so we work with a network of women who are in, well, Fiji, of course, but also the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, in Bougainville, and in West Papua. When this program initially started, we recruited women who were in spaces of influence that can influence policy making or some level of decision making in different spaces that would see that things happening at grassroots level as they affected women, or in different places as well, could be collated and transferred upwards to policy-making spaces, so that eventually when policymakers considered policy and rolled them out, it would really be effective for people that were the recipients of those policies. So the peace-building work with women in leadership is that work that we do. Lately, we've gone back to do interventions in Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, largely to map out what the issues are and to enhance the women on the ground working in communities with skills to manage those issues and how and where to articulate those issues. Through different ongoing programs, we've managed to link the women who are part of our women's leadership program in Fiji to connect with us on other programs as well. The third program is our restorative justice program. This is quite a large program for us, and it has many facets to it. So firstly, it's working with the Fiji Corrections Services. What we do is we provide training to corrections officers. So these are wardens that have daily interactions with people who are incarcerated, but also people at policy and decision-making levels who may make policies that will eventually be implemented to manage inmates. We also, through the Fiji Corrections Services, work on a specific number of one-on-one cases. This year we're working on 6 cases, and those cases range from murder to sexual crimes, violent assaults, a range of criminal offenses for which people are incarcerated. So we will work with the offender, we will work with the victim. And this is what makes restorative justice a unique program, because the Fiji Corrections Service, although they have a very strong rehab policy, it is not their mandate to be working with victims. So that's a perfect match for us to ensure complete rehab, that all parties are consulted and their interests looked after. So we engage with the victim, we engage with the offender, but we also engage with the wider community, the communities of care for both the victim and the offender. So we start working with on those cases a little prior to the release of the offender back into the community. So maybe a year to 2 years before. So we're preparing all parties for the eventual release. So when that individual is released, there's acceptance, because we tend to find, I don't like to use the word often, but it has happened, especially, where there's a violent offense that has happened, rape for instance. When the offender is released back, somebody's brother or father or uncle still is not satisfied with the kind of punishment meted out. So at somewhere down the line, that individual may get punched up or something. So what happens? Somebody else goes to jail for assault. And so the cycle of violence continues. In our restorative justice program, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Change behavior so that cycles of violence reduces. And only when those things stop will we be able to reduce the prison population numbers, It's a small thing which is part of a bigger collective that many agencies are working on. And PCP's contribution to that process is our restorative justice program. And we're very happy to note that in the rehab policy now, the Pacific Center for Peacebuilding is noted as an official service provider. So we provide ongoing training in all these different spaces. And so also, I think about a month ago, we were also very happy to note that when the Attorney General opened up, I think it was one of the remand centers at the Nuttambur prison, he mentioned that statistics show that there is a 10% reduction in recidivism. So, we're happy to contribute to that as well through our program work, and we have an excellent working relationship with the corrections officials. They're also, through the direction of the Commissioner, very forward-thinking in terms of the need to focus on rehab. So, that's the work we're doing in that space, in restorative justice, but also as a part of restorative justice, we're working with the Fiji police force. So again, training the police officers at different levels. We've started off with community policing, and then we'll go off to the mobile unit and at the academy as well, when the new recruits begin their training, is how do we manage people without using violence? What are the tools that we can use in different situations? Because restorative justice is about using tools to manage different conflict situations. And we're going to be working also with the Ministry of Social Welfare on the juvenile boys' home, because these are young people, of course, in formative years, and so we're going to be providing training in that space. And restorative justice provides very practical tools. It talks about anger management, leadership, active communication, mindful communication, stress and trauma management. Something else we're providing training on in that space is how do you listen to everybody's voices? So things like the circle process, which is a very specialized tool, but which also links to our cultural context. So we provide that. And then under the same program, we're in the schools as well, talking to schools administrators, prefects, counselors, and teachers who manage children on a day-to-day basis. How do young people manage their conflict issues so that they're not resolving their problems by punching up each other, but they're communicating and they're able to get to the point of what has caused the problem and solve it there, rather than seeing what's on the top and try to manage that, but the problem keeps festering. So that in a nutshell are our 3 programs. We're going to start very soon a pretty large program on climate change and conflict, and in particular the role of women in that space. So the peace building process involves firstly looking at what is it that requires peace building, what is it, and then who is involved, why do we need to make peace, and then how are you going to do that, who are you going to involve, what are the process. You're going to do some inward review. Are you able to do this on yourself? Who else is working in that space that you need to harness expertise from? And what is it that's already in the space that you need to pull in to build peace? Because sometimes we go in thinking we have all the answers for the communities, but the answers may be there. They've been looking after themselves for years. So let's have a conversation internally to see what is the issue there and why is it that it's escalating. So peace building is about dialogue. It's about finding root causes of problems and addressing root causes. It's about mapping to find who the key players are. And it's about harnessing our collective knowledge to solve things amicably without the use of violence. So as I mentioned, we're in many spaces, and the conflicts in the different spaces are significant for the space they're in. So in that space, all of the work is important, because if those are not controlled or managed in that space, they have the possibility of escalating to something bigger, which becomes bad for that space. So for me, it's all those spaces are important, but particularly close to me, and they're all close to me, but what I think is perhaps significant is the work we do with young people. They're our future, they're our future leaders. How are we equipping them to be good leaders? How are we equipping them to listen before you make decisions? How are we equipping them to make informed decisions? But importantly, how are we equipping them to be nonviolent, to resolve things using nonviolent means? And as they do that, we continue to build peaceful societies where people are secure. And security means different things for different people. It's the security of being safe in your homes, walking the street, going to work, knowing you will not be bullied, going to work, knowing that you will be treated equally with other people, but also in communities. Peace is knowing that you have access to all of the services, clean water, electricity, roads, access to market, good education, health facilities, knowing that you have access to this on an equal basis regardless of where you're staying. So for us, work in our communities is also equipping them with knowledge of what channels to pursue in government to take your issues to, so that they continue to escalate to higher levels, so that they factor in policy spaces. And when they factor in policy spaces, they get recognized in budgets. So that's why peace building work is so important. I think it's always important for us to be aware of what's going in your situation. If there's a conflict happening, if there's if you see something that you think is not fair, you need to flag that. You need to identify who's in your space to tell them, look, there's this common issue which everybody should have equal access to, but I'm finding just one group is accessing it more than the others. Others are feeling left out. So you need to continue to identify where things are not happening on an equal footing, calling that out. Where there's something that's unjust happening, call it out. If you see a woman is being ill-treated, front up. Train yourselves also on where you can report those things, who should be listening to what's happening in your community. If you are lucky enough to have something for yourself or your family, and your neighbor is not, find out why aren't they not getting it. So, it's those little things that we can do to see that everybody has equal access to enable them to a decent living. So the Pacific Center for Peacebuilding works in many spaces, and I've highlighted some of the work we're doing. If you feel you have an expertise that could contribute to our work, we're happy to have a conversation with you. Because, obviously the issues are many, the work is great, and we need many minds and many skills to do that well. So, yeah, we deliver our work in a collaborative way through network building, and we invite you to be a part of our network.
Social Plug Fiji. Click on the subscribe button to stay up to date on all our latest videos.